In the midst of World War II, while armies fought in Europe and the Pacific burned with fire, another equally deadly battle was fought silently beneath the waters of the Atlantic. There, the U-505 became one of the most feared enemies by the Allies. This German submarine wasn't just a war machine, it was an invisible predator. On each patrol, it stalked convoys, torpedoed ships, and disappeared without a trace. Between 1941 and 1943, the U-505 sank at least 8 Allied vessels, totaling more than 44,000 tons of destruction. Among its victims were British cargo ships, Norwegian tankers, and American merchant vessels. One of the deadliest attacks was against the SS Avila Star on July 6, 1942. More than 80 people died when the British transatlantic liner split in two after receiving torpedoes from the U-505. It also sank the SS Ben Moore, a merchant ship that burst into flames off the coast of South America. The name U-505 sent chills through the halls of Allied Naval Command. Every time it left port, it forced route diversions, reinforced escorts, and constant alerts. It was more than a submarine. It was a constant threat. That's why, when the opportunity arose to capture it, it wasn't just a technical challenge. It was a master move on the chessboard of war. But what many don't know is that, before its capture, the U-505 already carried a dark history. Its first commander, Axel Lowe, suffered a nervous breakdown after a failed patrol and was removed from command. Morale aboard deteriorated. There were tensions, constant fear, and even attempts at internal sabotage. The submarine had a reputation for being cursed. On June 4, 1944, a Grumman Avenger aircraft, launched from the aircraft carrier USS Guadalcanal, spotted the U-505 navigating on the surface. Immediately, the signal was transmitted to the escort group. The destroyers USS Pillsbury and USS Chatelaine approached quickly and launched depth charges with precision. The submarine suffered severe damage, electrical systems failed, propulsion was compromised, and it began to flood. Captain Harold Lang, believing that sinking was imminent, ordered the submarine to be abandoned. They activated the self-destruct charges and jumped into the water. They thought the U-505 would disappear to the ocean floor, like so many others before it. But the submarine didn't sink. It floated, wounded but intact. It was the perfect opportunity. A boarding party, specially trained for this mission, jumped into the water. They climbed onto the still-moving submarine. It could explode at any moment. The Germans had activated a self-destruct charge. There was little time. The American sailors found the interior flooded, engines shut down, and loose cables everywhere. But there was no time for fear. They searched for the explosive charge. They deactivated it just in time. Then they found the radio room. And there it was, the Enigma machine. Along with the day's codes. Secret documents. Everything intact. What they found exceeded all expectations. Not only was an Enigma machine recovered, but also future code tables, encrypted messages, patrol records, and technical manuals. The intelligence haul was so valuable that it was immediately decided to keep it in absolute secrecy. In less than 30 minutes, they had accomplished what no one had done before: capture an operational German submarine without it self-destructing or sinking. And they did it in the middle of the ocean, under constant risk. For the U.S., this was a stroke of luck and strategy. But for Germany, it was a disaster. They lost not only a powerful war machine, but also crucial information. After the capture, the U-505 was secretly towed away. The German sailors were taken prisoner. Everything was classified. Not even other American commanders knew what had happened. The objective was to prevent Germany from finding out. If they knew, they would change the codes. And everything captured would lose its value. The 58 crew members of the U-505 were sent to a secret prisoner camp in the United States, where they were kept incommunicado from the rest of the world. They weren't allowed to write letters or communicate with their families. This was also part of the secret. If Germany knew they were alive, they would understand that the submarine hadn't been sunk. Germany believed that the U-505 had been lost like so many others. They never imagined it had been captured almost intact. This allowed the Allies to intercept and decrypt communications for weeks without the enemy knowing. The U-505 was taken to Bermuda, where it was studied thoroughly. Its machinery, its torpedoes, its design. Everything was analyzed by engineers and cryptography experts. The intelligence obtained helped reduce convoy losses in the Atlantic and weakened the German submarine campaign. The U-505 was taken to Bermuda, where it was studied thoroughly. Its machinery, its torpedoes, its design. Everything was analyzed by engineers and cryptography experts. The intelligence obtained helped reduce convoy losses in the Atlantic and weakened the German submarine campaign. What's curious is that this operation had been planned in advance. Captain Gallery had convinced High Command that a boarding was possible. He trained his crew for weeks. Boarding drills, search procedures, bomb deactivation. Everything was ready for that moment. It wasn't luck. It was preparation. Capturing the U-505 changed submarine warfare. U-boats were no longer invincible. And more importantly, the Allies now had an intelligence advantage. Furthermore, Gallery insisted on maintaining the operation in strictest secrecy. The entire crew was ordered not to speak of the capture. For weeks, even other naval commanders thought the U-505 had been sunk like any other enemy submarine. This allowed the codes and materials found to remain useful for much longer. In war, information is power, and the U.S. Navy had just delivered a masterstroke on that front. Decades later, the U-505 was moved to Chicago, to the Museum of Science and Industry. The process wasn't easy. Streets had to be cut, enormous structures mounted, and the submarine of more than 750 tons moved with special cranes. Today, thousands of people walk through its narrow corridors, observe its torpedoes, its control room, its radio, and relive one of the most audacious operations in naval history. Among the visitors, some have been veterans who participated in the mission. One of them, Albert David, was decorated with the Medal of Honor for being the first to board the enemy submarine. His bravery saved not only the U-505, but also the lives of his own comrades. David would die shortly after in another naval incident, but his legacy was sealed in history. Today, the U-505 is not just a memory. It's a lesson of strategy, of preparation, of courage, of how, even in the greatest war in history, there were moments when ingenuity overcame force. In the darkness of the ocean, a group of sailors decided not to shoot first, but to capture, learn, and change the course of war. The U-505 was hunted, yes, with depth charges that forced it to surface. But what really defeated it wasn't the explosions, but the audacity, training, and intelligence of a team that bet everything on an impossible capture. A story that deserves to be told again and again. A victory that also linked with one of the most transcendental secret efforts of the war, Project Ultra. The information decrypted thanks to the capture of the U-505 complemented the work of British cryptoanalysts at Bletchley Park, who were already working on breaking the Enigma codes. What was found in the submarine allowed them to validate and accelerate that process. Captain Daniel Gallery himself summarized it years later with a forceful phrase, "We didn't want to sink another submarine, we wanted to steal one." That decision, as risky as it was brilliant, changed the balance in the Atlantic. And as a curious fact, the U-505 was the first enemy submarine captured by the United States Navy since 1815, when they seized a pirate ship during the Barbary Wars. 129 years passed before something like this happened again. In a world where technology and force often dominate, the capture of the U-505 reminds us that cunning, courage, and intelligence can change the course of history. It wasn't just a naval victory. It was a victory of human ingenuity in the midst of chaos. If you liked the video, please comment, like, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.